Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. One of the main MVPs in tabletop RPGs is the Game Master. Without them, we wouldn't have a world to explore, characters to interact with, or a quest to go on. And a lot of DMs out there are great, and should be thanked every so often to show our appreciation for them. Though, just like with players, sometimes there are DMs that leave a lot to be desired, or just outright be unfair in their rulings. Much like the DMs in these next D&D horror stories. But first, you know him and you love him. It's Lucky, the like and comment kitty. He sure loves that toy lizard. But with that done, let's get right into the stories. That time, my DM forced my death because I was too new to make homebrew. By Reddit user W084. So, sometime in November of 2020, one of my friends invited me to a 5e campaign, and I was the only one who didn't personally know the DM. My friend played as a tiefling sorcerer, someone else played a half-elf cleric, who I'll call cleric for simplicity, and a variant human rogue. I was a homebrew race, jackal folk, and a monk. They are usually lawful, I was lawful neutral, and very importantly, have advantage in death saves. But they also don't know a lot about the world in different ways. My character didn't know what magic really was. He figured some people can just say magic words and the gods give them power, which was true for cleric, so there was no reason for him to think otherwise. He was also fairly intelligent, but had a -2 on wisdom. This is because, in his monastery, no one really lied, so he believed a lot of people that he considered good. It was a homebrew campaign where magic worked differently. Magic was a barely obtainable energy with lots of risks when used. Not for a cleric though, because I guess they were DM's favorite. The campaign was hosted over Discord, and there weren't many problems. I showed them my homebrew, and they said that seems balanced, and the first 2 campaigns went on. Everything was going fine, with a lot of roleplay and cool world building, but one time we were facing a mind flare, and I almost died. I had to make a wisdom saving throw, and it failed. And I would have failed the death saving throws too, if it weren't for my advantage. He went on for the rest of that game, talking about how I was so close to dying. Not in a, quote, "Wow, that's so cool how you saved that" type of way. More like a, quote, "How could you have done that homebrew that I approved of" kind of way. I figured it's fine, he'll be over it by the next session. Boy, was I wrong. He hated me for the rest of the campaign, treated me like I should be dead. It helped that cleric would constantly heal me because it seemed like 2/3 of the enemies targeted me, and the rest would actually target the party. One time, I was hit with 4 attacks and would have been put on my death saving throws if cleric wasn't healing me next in initiative. The DM also started giving the party level ups, but not me. I mentioned it like a joke at first, but he did it almost half the time. There was a scene where I was up against a shambling mount, alone, because the rest of the party decided to split up. The rogue actually wanted to help me, but the DM said, quote, "You should probably stay with the party so no one gets hurt." He also made a snarky comment on how, quote, "If he dies, he'll just live anyways. He has death save advantage." You could tell he was still pissed about me being alive, though I got past it without much of a problem and met up with the rest of the party later on. You know, right after he put me through hell. He would have more than 9 enemies on me at one time, and the battles were really sloppy, not to be rude. You could tell he didn't even have that many enemies prepared. Almost to the end of the campaign, he had several cultists, long story, attack the party, and I'm not lying when I say all but one attacked me. And that was because the last one was healing. He insisted to the cleric that she shouldn't heal me several times, and he got me down the death saves again. I rolled a 14, failure. I rolled an 8, failure. I rolled a natural 20, success. Then a 16, failure. I should have lived, but no. Failure. I mentioned to the DM that I have advantage, and I definitely should have lived overall, but he interrupts me with, quote, "I'm the DM. I make the rules. You died. Roll up a new character." My friend defended me, saying, quote, "Do you want me to kill you too?" I asked the DM, "Do you hate my character or something? It feels like you've been trying to kill him the whole game." And he said, quote, "Yeah, well, you're too inexperienced to make homebrew anyway. I never should have approved it." So, I left the campaign. So did my friend, and apparently the cleric did too. My friend told me that he said, quote, "What a crybaby. He's probably so mad right now, haha." My friend and cleric, don't know about Rogue, stopped being friends with him as well. It was actually kind of a shame. They were a great DM and an amazing world builder before they started hating me. I also want to mention, one time my character was in a conversation with an NPC who was great at controlling magic, a plot point. My character, who has no clue what magic is or how people use it, asked about the magic. He said in the conversation, quote, "So do you have a magic wand or something?" And the DM threw his hands on the table and said, quote, "That's not how magic works." I responded saying, "Okay, but my character doesn't know that." And he replied, quote, "Then maybe you shouldn't have made him so dumb." He then said how the wizard insulted me and mentioned, quote, "People like you should just be dead." Not sure if it was intentional, but very possible that it wasn't really the wizard talking to my character. Overall, a happy ending? I'm not sure how it could have gone better. Maybe me dying and rolling a new character? My friend actually thanked me after the campaign. They said that their friendship was toxic, and I gave them an excuse to stop being friends with them. So I guess there was more good than bad, and I'm pretty sure he ended the campaign when we left, hopefully before taking a reality check. This DM sounds like a real piece of work. If he was so concerned about OP having that ability to have an advantage on death saves, why did he even allow it in the first place? Instead of trying to kill OP's character in obvious ways until just saying, quote, "Nope, you're dead," he could have just nerfed the homebrew to make it only have advantage on the first death save. Instead, he acted like an ass and lost 2 players and 2 friends in the process. Have you ever had a DM get upset about allowing something in game, only to regret it later? If so, how would you handle the situation? Let's move on to the next story. Am I the asshole? DM changes monster stats mid-campaign and denies my first fireball. By Reddit user, Mike O'Card. So, I'm pretty sure this is not nearly as bad as the rest of the stories here, but I guess this place is also about exposing do's and don'ts of RPGs. So, I'm sharing this little incident where what my DM did wasn't really wrong, but the way he did it felt somewhat unfair. Although I have been told I took it too seriously. So, during our campaign, our level 4 party was exploring a ruined castle, where, as we discovered, a powerful hag was killed decades ago. In the lore we follow, maybe it's like that in the books, I don't know. When a hag is killed, unless its remains are blessed or sprinkled with holy water or similar, it comes back to life as a flame skull. As you can guess, we met a flame skull and started a battle. Now, my character is a caster, whose offensive spells are very fire-based. He is a little reckless and impulsive, but definitely not stupid. He sees this monster and thinks, well shit, that thing is covered in fire, so obviously that doesn't hurt it. So I just position, toss a magic missile, and hope for the best. Then another player, also a caster, has even less attack options. So he just says fuck it and tosses a firebolt, and it does damage. Not full damage, but it does. At this point, I had never read of Flameskull's stats, so both myself and my character, after seeing this, learned that Flameskulls are resistant but not immune to fire damage. The rest of the fight was tough but uneventful. We killed it and moved on. Some sessions later, we were in the woods, and after killing an actual hag ourselves, we finally reached level 5. Now, I was very excited about this. I hadn't had a chance to play much D&D until then, but I did have an interest for a while. And after all the community stories, jokes, and memes, which I'm a big fan of, about Fireball being a great spell and super fun to use, after months of playing with my very first caster, I was really looking forward to finally being in on the joke and experiencing this beautiful, absolutely balanced spell myself. It was one of the things I was most excited for in this campaign. Well, we leveled up right after killing the hag, and because we forgot to bless it, it became a flame skull and attacked us. During the fight, on my turn, as it had already taken a beating, I thought, okay, it's my chance. It might do half damage, but it might be enough to kill this thing. This is it. So I aimed at the beaten skull, described as I engraved arcane symbols in the air and how flames started rising from the ground, surrounding the skull and getting bigger and hotter, until, after fully engulfing the unholy creature, the flames burst out into a fiery, red, thundering explosion. And then, the DM says, "And you see that it did nothing." Wait, what? Your fireball, it did nothing to the skull. What do you mean it did nothing? It took no damage. It's immune to fire damage. Isn't it a flame skull just like the one from the castle? Yeah. Well, wasn't that one resistant to fire, not immune? Yeah, but I was nerfing that one because you guys were too low level. But my character just used Fireball because he learned that it affects flame skulls. We established that it hurts them. Well, not anymore. Sorry. And so, my most anticipated spell in the game was fizzled into nothing. I explained my frustration to the DM, who already knew how excited I was about Fireball, but he kept acting like he did nothing wrong. He was only adjusting the difficulty. Still, I felt like it was unfair to have a special moment for my character negated like that for balancing's sake. And not only that, I followed the information I learned in game. So, additionally, I felt like I was punished for not metagaming. Am I overreacting? Is it really that common to Ultra Monsters stats like that? Well, I would have to say that OP is not the asshole for being a little upset. Like he said, his character had established that fire damage hurt a previous flame skull, so that is why he thought it would again. For the DM to make a ruling like that, only to change the stats when he said it was the exact same type of monster, is kinda shitty. If anything, the DM could have said that it was a different kind of flame skull, maybe with a different color flame, or something like that. That way, OP might have not assumed that his spell would damage it. It's not the worst horror story out there, but I can still understand why OP was a little peeved. Though, what do you think? I'm legit curious. On to the next story. DM ditched mid-session after months due to lack of, quote, dedication. By Reddit user Harmless Hannibal. Just for the story, I haven't played much 5e, so I wasn't sure how games were meant to go, so this, I suppose, is for clarification. Previously, me and a friend did a one-shot with this DM, and while they were a bit strict, it did seem like a good bit of fun. However, that all changed when it came to a full campaign, which me and my friend were invited to. It started with the rules. No speaking when the DM was speaking, at all, even while in character. Otherwise, they'd get stroppy. We had to keep strict notes of the events that unfolded in character, and it had to be updated weekly before the session. Otherwise, they'd get stroppy. It was a 4-hour session, with sometimes a 10 to 20 minute break, so for me, it was hard to maintain focus throughout. Absolutely no out of character, not even for a quick joke or to check the rules. It was unacceptable. Originally, there were 4 of us playing, me, my friend, and 2 others we never met. The story was fun, and it was good to play along. But being a new player, in the first sessions, I didn't know what I could do. So I'd ask, quote, "Can I do an attack with my rapier?" But I'd get told that for hesitating, I couldn't do anything. This happened a few times, and I never received any clarification on what to do on those turns. So I just had to keep asking my friend instead. and it led to me being very passive initially. I played a bard since it seemed like good fun, and relied more on speech than combat, which I knew was my Achilles heel, but this came with its own set of problems. My spells, arguably the strongest part of a bard, could not be casted. I had to sing them, then it would be decided if they were to take effect. Additionally, I couldn't say what I wished to cast, otherwise it would be viewed with distaste. Sometimes the spells just full-on wouldn't work. That's what I got told. Once it failed on a group of wolves since they couldn't understand my singing. You were allowed about 10 seconds in real time to choose your move. You couldn't deliberate with your party due to no out of character, and since I couldn't say what spell, I had to multitask, sing, and message the DM what I planned to do. Now, I cannot say that there were only bad times. For the sessions we played, we had tremendous fun. Just, it was with the ever-looming threat of being outstandingly well-behaved for a leisure activity. Obviously, there were some points that did cause some minor contention. Partially, one of the party, the Warforged, had a mini-game that took about 20 to 30 minutes while they were, quote, hacking. During this, me and my friend couldn't see what was unfolding and just had to sit quietly while the Warforged was spoken through something. The DM didn't like silences, but you couldn't talk when they spoke, and they liked to take dramatic pauses. This created some awkward times when the three of us were waiting, since we didn't know if they were done talking, and they were getting frustrated by us three for not talking. Me and my friend, the monk, went through plots, and were meant to go through dramatic character growth, but it was supposed to be instantaneous. Anytime we sometimes showed different attitudes as people do, it was deemed out of character, making us very 2D. No modern day slang was allowed, and even a slip-up of, for God's sake, got you a warning since you had to refer to the DM's pantheon. The worst case of this had to be Monk saying the word trendsetter, which got her warned. Now, onto how it came about that we were dropped. After we had to write long diary entries, perform genuine songs, give true speeches that played for months, we were in a town where the inhabitants kept resetting and we were working hard to break the loop. Me and Monk weren't as invested into helping due to suspicions, while Warforged was fully involved due to it being their old home. So while the Warforged went about recounting old memories, I tried my best figuring out a key detail to breaking it almost immediately, and Monk just enjoyed the city. The climax was, we sort of did it, but not really since it couldn't be resolved so quickly. So we went to head off. Me and Monk had some more banter, but then the DM called a break to the session. When they came back, they said it was over. We clearly did not show enough passion and weren't involved enough for the story. This is after multiple sessions in this town where all three of our characters fought tooth and nail to make change, only leading to less enthusiasm as it dragged on and on and on. Later on, I did get a message clarifying that it was not due to that, but because me and my friend liked to banter occasionally, since, quote, I would not achieve the expected growth. Overall, it came off as a giant waste of time, and I have yet to play 5e again, or any tabletop RPG. The DM, however, still wished to be friends after discarding us so swiftly, which I declined and left. TLDR, joined my first campaign, got no help and strict rules before being ditched without hesitation, due to us having a brief bit of banter after slogging it in a giant puzzle for over 20 hours. Holy God! I can understand a DM setting some rules for no metagaming and trying to keep focus on the game at hand, but this was just overkill. I play a bard in one game, and while I don't dismiss the chance that I may someday do so, I really can't sing. Or come up with rhymes right on the spot. You play a character to get away from the real world for a little bit, and the DM forcing OP to sing each spell to keep the realism is kind of messed up. Especially since he would make the spell not work every now and then without a roll. Plus, one of the best things about D&D is the ability to make jokes making light of whatever situation the characters might be in. It can add some levity to otherwise stressful situations. I know for a fact that if I ever experience a DM that is this into strict rules for their games, I would leave right away, and I would suggest the same to anyone else. D&D is supposed to be fun, not a freaking practice of obedience. I hope OP has since found a better game. Have you ever had a DM that made rulings that you know to be unfair? Have you ever had a DM that had really strict rules that borderlined on insane? If so, be sure to share your experience in the comments. If you have a story that you would like to be shared in a video, be sure to post it in the comments, on the channel subreddit, or even just at me on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and remember to thank your DMs for not being like the ones in these stories. Until next time.